Hey everyone, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today we'll be continuing our Monday mock draft rendition here for the NFL. And before we jump into it, if you guys do enjoy the NFL mock draft coverage or you're new to our channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We love pumping out the content here for you guys. We've been doing this every Monday, and that'll continue throughout the rest of the season and into the off season. So this is something we're going to try and continue here. So make sure you're subscribed to not miss out on any of our coverage here at Utility Sports. All right, Austin, jumping into pick number one here, we have the New York Jets on the clock, a team that is struggled mightily this year. Obviously, played kind of close last night to the Los Angeles Chargers. What do you think about the New York Jets here?
Yeah, so it's been clear and obvious throughout the entire draft process, ever since we kind of figured out the Jets would have the number one pick, that the consensus will be Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is definitely going to have to be the selection. I don't see them trading out of this pick. You have a generational quarterback sitting at number one. You take Trevor Lawrence.
All right, for our viewers who haven't looked at Lawrence a lot, obviously most of our viewers will know quite a bit about him, but for those who don't, what makes Trevor Lawrence such a generational prospect?
He has a lot of the physical tools. He's 6'6". He can move in the pocket and he can scramble a little bit. But what really makes him special is being able to throw to the short, intermediate, and long route concepts. And he does need to play with a little bit more anticipation. He's more of a reactionary thrower, but he needs to be a guy that you can count on, making those reads before they happen, before the receiver breaks. That's one thing he can improve on. However, he's an all-around great prospect.
Perfect. Jumping into number two here, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, Gardner Minshew's been a little beat up this year. We've seen a lot of Jake Luton lately. Do you see the Jaguars going quarterback here at two?
Yeah, once again, Jacksonville, don't overthink it. You have another franchise quarterback sitting in front of you. Justin Fields this past week had some issues. He had 3 interceptions in that game, but honestly, I'm not worried about it. Let's not have an overreaction to this last week, because before that, he was completing 90% of his passes. So honestly, I'm not going to worry about Justin Fields. I think he's also a franchise quarterback, so Jacksonville needs to be smart about this. Trade Gardner Minshew, get whatever asset you can before the draft, and then select your franchise guy at number two.
Yeah, obviously for the Jaguars there, that's a key acquisition. And obviously last year they used two of their first round picks on defense, so now they get to go on the offensive end and grab that franchise guy. Jumping into number three here, a team that's probably going to end up staying in the top three, obviously after the Joe Burrow torn ACL that we saw yesterday. Obviously one of the sadder bits of news in the NFL. We wish the best of luck to him in his recovery and best of health moving forward. Do you see the Bengals here addressing that offensive line position to keep him healthy in the future?
Yeah, I think this one's going to be a clear and obvious. Penei Sewell from Oregon, the tackle. He's been the consensus number one tackle so far throughout this draft process and the season. I expect that to continue through the workouts, combine, etc. But having Penei Sewell at this selection, I think Bengal fans, you have to feel pretty happy about that. Honestly, you have to get rid of Bobby Hart, and I think the pathway to do that, you move Jonah Williams to right tackle, you move Sewell to left tackle. Obviously, Joe Burrow's been getting, beat up this year, so we have to consider that. You got to take the franchise tackle, protect your franchise quarterback, especially since he's going to be hobbled moving forward. A torn ACL is going to be a tough one for him to come back from, but I think he can do that, and a pathway of doing that is getting a franchise tackle.
Yeah, Burrow coming back and seeing the best offensive tackle on his team would be a pretty pleasant sight, in my opinion, for him. Now jumping into number four here, the Dallas Cowboys came with a close win over the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday. Obviously, a team that's quite a bit more talented than some of these other teams, and honestly, it's kind of surprising to be a top five team here. Obviously, injuries have kind of derailed their season a little bit. We saw Dak Prescott go down. Obviously, their O line's been a little banged up. There's not a clear and obvious need, but quite a few places that they could improve a bit. Where do you see the Cowboys going?
I think for this selection, they would opt to trade down. But just considering we are not doing trades in this, we're going to go Patrick Surtain, excuse me, from the University of Alabama. He's the corner. He's a sticky man-to-man guy. He's the guy that fills a need opposite of Trayvon Diggs. You got to kind of shore up that secondary. If you're a Dallas Cowboy fans, you really want another corner opposite of Diggs. You got to keep addressing the defense. So for Dallas, makes a lot of sense to go corner. Sertan's definitely the right pick.
Yeah, definitely. I like the fit there. You said a sticky man-to-man guy, a player that they badly need at this point to really take on number one assignments. Trayvon Diggs is a quality corner that's growing yet, but I think Surtain would be a huge improvement out on the outside for them. Jumping into 5, the Washington football team here now on the clock, a team that's currently starting Alex Smith at quarterback. Obviously, the Dwayne Haskins under Ron Rivera hasn't quite worked out the way many would have hoped. Do you see Washington addressing that quarterback spot here?
Yeah, once again, I think Washington is going to be looking at quarterback. I think they're also looking at other spots, hoping, to. I think they will go quarterback still. I really, really do. I think Trey Lance will be the selection for Washington. If you're Washington, you want a guy that's athletic, can move around the pocket. It's a very close pick because I think Zach Wilson would also be kind of worthy of this selection. But I think Lance right now might be slightly ahead of him. It's unfortunate that we could only see him in one game this year because last year he did not have a single turnover in terms of interceptions. I think he only had a couple of fumbles, but he was not throwing interceptions last year. Really, really like that fit with Washington. I think it makes a lot of sense for Washington to get that quarterback at the number 5 spot.
Yeah, so we see 3 QBs now go in the top 5 here. Austin, this is a pretty strong QB class to my understanding. Can you walk the viewers through that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of quarterbacks that could actually go in the first round. We saw that a couple of years ago with the Lamar Jackson class and Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks that are worthy of being selected in the first round, and there's teams with needs, right? So Trey Lance is another guy, like we had mentioned, he's a very strong prospect. But there's also Zach Wilson. There's Kyle Trask from Florida. There's Mac Jones from Alabama. There's a lot of guys that could sneak into this first round, and I think quite a few of them have solidified themselves. I think Mac Jones is kind of that borderline first to second round guy, but I think very possibly at the end of this, being, he's leading that Alabama Crimson Tide team, possibly to a national championship. I think it really looks good on his resume to push him to a first round guy. So that's kind of the analysis on that. Anybody have questions about those quarterbacks, let me know in the comment section below.
Yeah, definitely. And any questions you guys have about any selections, what our reasoning behind it, if we don't explain it fully, make sure to hit the comments down below. Our NFL draft expert puts a lot of time into this, and he's pretty well versed in all the prospects, so he'll definitely be getting back to you guys. Jumping into 6 here now, we see the Los Angeles Chargers, a team obviously once again riddled with injuries. This seems to be a pretty consistent trend for the Chargers year in, year out. Where do you have them going? Because there's quite a few different directions I think that they could go.
Yeah, I think for the Chargers, they could look offensive tackle. I definitely think that was in play, but considering Sewell's off the board, there's no trade back options in this mock draft. We're actually going to have Gregory Rousseau going here. This is going to be a popular one, in my opinion, that we could start seeing. Melvin Ingram is on his way out, likely with the contract situation. They're going to be kind of strapped for cap. They're not going to be able to afford to pay another edge rusher. Rousseau slides perfectly in that, can play the run. He can play the pass. He's a good pass rusher. I really like Rousseau for the Chargers at this spot.
Yeah, Rousseau would be a great fit. Obviously, you mentioned Ingram and his contract situation, so I really like that selection there coming out of the University of Miami. Now into 7, we have the other New York team, the New York Giants, now on the clock. Obviously, last year addressed tackle with Andrew Thomas, and the year prior took quarterback Daniel Jones in the first round. Do you see the Giants sticking on the offensive side of the football, or do you see them addressing needs on the defensive side?
I think it's very possible that they would look at Micah Parsons here, but I think they're going to try to do what's best for Daniel Jones in this situation. They got Andrew Thomas, like you had mentioned last year. I think Jamar Chase will be the selection. You get another dynamic playmaker with Saquon Barkley. You also get, in my opinion, the best receiving prospect in the class, and he's one of the best receiving prospects we've seen in the last couple of years. I really like Jamar Chase. He can do it all. He can run the route tree to the entirety. He can catch contested balls, but he's a guy that always seems to be open when you watch his film. I love Jamar Chase. It's unfortunate that he opted out because I think he could have had a record-breaking season with LSU. I think that makes a lot of sense for New York.
Yeah, Jamar Chase, obviously a player we haven't gotten to see this year because of that opt-out, but last year with Joe Burrow was phenomenal. I believe he had 20 touchdowns, if that is correct, and a guy that, quite frankly, is going to be a game changer in New York if he does go there. Now into pick number 8 here, the Miami Dolphins, a team that would probably be hoping Jamar Chase is on the board with this pick from the Houston Texans. Where do you see the Dolphins going now? Do you see them addressing a need in Brian Flores' defense or helping Tua Tagovailoa out on the offensive end?
I think that's very possible to actually get a playmaker with their later first round pick. So I'm actually going to have them go best player available, Micah Parsons. He's a versatile linebacker. He's a sideline to sideline linebacker. He has the ability to force fumbles. But what's really impressive about him is he can rush the quarterback too. And if we know anything about Brian Flores and the New England little stems that he has, they love versatile linebackers that can rush the passer, play coverage, and defend the run. So honestly, he brings all three to the table. Micah Parsons at 8 is a steal.
Yeah, definitely a dynamic linebacker, something that, as you mentioned, really fits into that New England type style defensive concept, and obviously something that Flores has really been utilizing well in Miami at this point. They've been very successful this year, and I think Parsons is a home run selection there for them at 8. Now into pick number 9, we have the Atlanta Falcons on the clock, a team with kind of a spotty draft history. Obviously, they don't necessarily take who many believe is the best player available. They kind of seem to have their guys, so they're one of the tougher teams to mock. Where do you have them going?
I have them going Quiddy Pay. I think that getting an edge rusher for Atlanta is where they need to go. They have to replace McKinley. They have to replace the Vic Beasley that had left. And they haven't been able to really do that so far. Atlanta's defense has had some issues rushing the passer, but I think Pay slots in perfectly for this Atlanta team.
Yeah, the edge rusher is definitely a big need. We've seen it this year. Honestly, they just got beat by Taysom Hill and the New Orleans Saints. So getting more pressure in that front four is something that they should really be valuing, and I think Kwity Paye brings that to them. Now jumping into the Carolina Panthers, a team that came off a 20-0 shutout victory over the Detroit Lions this week. A team that's been kind of up and down. Obviously, PJ Walker started this week for them, but Bridgewater's been pretty stable at the quarterback position. Do you see them passing on QB this year and then running it back one more year with Bridgewater? And then where do you see them going if you do?
Yeah, so I don't think quarterback's on the table for them this year. I think they're going to just continue to try to get better on the defensive side of the football. For Panthers fans, you know that you really want a linebacker, also corners in need. But Caleb Farley is going to be my selection, the 6'2" corner out of Virginia Tech. He's definitely a guy that's going to be able to slot on opposite of Dante Jackson. I really like the pick there, getting that other corner. Just keep improving your defense. We saw it with Derek Brown. He's definitely taken some strides, and he's helped out that Carolina Panthers defense. I really, really like the selection. Getting Farley at 10, you get another corner. Keep improving that defense because I think Joe Brady can do enough on the offensive end. Matt Rule, I think that they can have enough offensively to be pretty competitive.
Yeah, definitely here with Farley. You see that long-term replacement for James Bradbury, who they lost to the Giants in free agency. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, that defense has given up a lot of yards this year, given up a lot of points. Even while the offense has been extremely dynamic and successful with McCaffrey even out, I think that makes all the sense in the world there. Now moving into 11, we have kind of unfamiliar territory here for the New England Patriots. Not a team that we see up in the top 15 very often. Where do you see the Patriots going if they stick around this spot?
Yeah, so I think this is another opportunity for New England to trade down, but there's some big needs that they have, especially at the tight end position. They've had a lot of struggles getting production out of their tight ends, basically since Gronkowski's departure. I really like Kyle Pitts out of Florida. I think he's very worthy of the 11th selection, even if they stick here. He's a guy that he's one of the first tight ends that could be in the Heisman conversation. He's a vertical threat. He's explosive. He's exactly what New England needs for their offense. They also could look wide receiver, but they've had some issues at wideout. Obviously, they've had guys like Jacoby Myers and Edelman's had some issues with injuries. But I really like Kyle Pitts going to New England. You got to get Cam Newton another weapon.
Yeah, and on the Cam Newton front, do you see Cam Newton sticking around for one more year?
I think they're going to run it back one more year. I think they're going to give it one more try with them. Obviously, they've had some tough luck with some opt outs, and I think they would have been better if some of those guys had opted in and played this year. But this is kind of unfamiliar territory, like you said, seeing New England this high. I think they're going to give it another shot next year, though.
Yeah, definitely. I think Kyle Pitts makes all the sense in the world for the reasons you laid out, and I think that whether or not Newton's back, I think the pick works either way. Going into pick 12 here, we have the Detroit Lions, obviously a team that just got shut out by the Carolina Panthers, like I had said. There's quite a few different needs for this team. They could go a whole bunch of different ways. I don't know. Not a lot of people have been really mocking QB there to them. Do you see this as a possible quarterback landing spot, or is that a few years out yet?
Yeah, I think it's very possible that they do look quarterback through the draft process. it's hard to know considering we don't know what Stafford's market's going to look like. I'm not going to assume a trade in this situation. I'm just going to be under the assumption that they stick with Stafford. So I'm actually going to elect to go with Dylan Moses, the athletic linebacker from Alabama. He's a guy that very well could have came out last year, but unfortunately with injuries, he ended up staying. And for Detroit, it's all about improving that front seven. Aquara has been a pleasant surprise at the edge rushing spot. You're going to get Trey Flowers back. Danny Shelton's going to be a piece that you keep in the middle, but I think you got to improve that front seven. Dylan Moses is the perfect fit for Detroit.
Yeah, definitely get that sideline to sideline type of linebacker, someone who can get out in space and move defensively. I think that's a very sensible pick for them. And obviously, that's a big part of Matt Patricia's defense if he's back, or a solid building block if they do replace Matt Patricia going into this offseason. Looking at number 13 here now, the Minnesota Vikings coming off a disappointing loss. Obviously, we're on a 3-game win streak. Could have went back to 500 with a win against the Cowboys, but ended up falling short, and now we're standing at 4-6 on the season. Where do you see the Vikings going, assuming they stick around this 13 to 15 range?
I think Quincy Roche's the pick. You get another edge rusher opposite of Danielle Hunter. I really, really like having Roche go here. He was one of the most productive defensive ends in all of college football last year. Transferred to Miami, having a solid season once again. I really want Roche to be in Minnesota. I think that's the perfect fit. For Mike Zimmer, he's going to want a defensive end. They've obviously had some tough luck losing guys like Weatherly, and it's really unfortunate how the whole Ngakoue situation played out for them. They ended up losing big on that trade, unfortunately, but you do get your edge rusher of the future here at 13.
Yeah, definitely. You get that 5th-year option too as a first-round edge, so they're going to be able to use him for a long time without having to pay him, something that's obviously valuable once you're paying your quarterback over $30 million a year. And now we see 2 University of Miami edges go in the top 13, something to definitely monitor. That's probably one of the highest duos ever from one college. That's some Ohio State type stuff, so congratulations to the University of Miami for that. At pick 14 here now, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, we have quite a few 49ers fans in our comment section. Where do you have them going? And 49ers fans, let us know if you like the pick.
Yeah, once again, I have Zach Wilson. I'm going to keep mocking this. I think that getting Zach Wilson at this selection is a really, really good pick for you 49er fans. You're going to be able to replace Jimmy Garoppolo. Zach Wilson should bring a lot more than Jimmy Garoppolo currently is bringing. He's an extremely accurate quarterback. He can move in the pocket. He's smart with the football. That's the big thing, and he knows how to win. BYU is the best it's been in a long, long time. This is mainly predicated off of Zach Wilson's success. You watch him. He's a gamer, and I think he can win a ton of football games for you. I think that's a very viable quarterback pick, and having him at 14, you're feeling pretty happy. He's been a late riser through the process. Not a lot of people had him on their radar going into the season, and all of a sudden he is for sure first-round selection.
Yeah, definitely. You're looking at the 49ers making big strides going into next year. Obviously, this year has been a little shaky due to some of their injuries on the defensive line. We saw Nick Bosa go out and some of their other key pieces, and now hopefully those pieces will be back ready and healthy at the start of next year, and with a new quarterback, Zach Wilson. At pick 15 here now, we have the Denver Broncos, a team that could possibly be looking quarterback, would be a threat to get Zach Wilson if they do end up on top of the 49ers drafting before them. At 15, though, here behind the 49ers, where do you see them going?
Yeah, so for everybody that's a Broncos fan, like you'd like to see corner here, maybe an offensive tackle. But for this selection, I'm going to have them going Charles Snowden. Snowden is definitely a guy that'll step in right away, help improve that defense. You obviously invested quite a bit in your offense. You have some pieces on the offensive side of the football, like Jerry Jeudy, you drafted last year. So we got to come back to the defensive side of the football and take Snowden with that selection. Once again, one of those late risers. He's a guy that he's a hard hitter, and I think he fits kind of into that Bronco identity.
Yeah, addressing the middle of that defense, obviously something very important under Vic Fangio. And something that the Broncos should really be considering, and Broncos fans should be pretty happy with that selection. Jumping into the middle part of the first round here, we have the Chicago Bears, a team that has been kind of in free fall lately. Obviously, I believe they're at 500 now, and a team that has a question mark at the QB spot. Do you see them addressing quarterback or a different place?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with one of the top front-running Heisman candidates in Kyle Trask. I think for the Bears, it's very tough because you would like to try to fix that offensive line. Last mock, we had an offensive tackle, but I think for the Chicago Bears, it's important to get a guy that, who's going to be the future of your franchise at the most important position. And getting Kyle Trask at this position, you feel pretty good. He's a Heisman front runner, you could argue, or runner up possibly. I really like his game. I think it translates well to Matt Nagy's offense. He's an accurate quarterback. I really, really think that they should consider quarterback. And for the purposes of this mock, I think they might go Kyle Trask.
Obviously, Trask has found quite a bit of success with Kyle Pitts, the tight end there this year. So maybe that's something also to monitor, him and Cole Kmet in the future. The quarterback tight end duo could be something to watch in Chicago. Jumping into 17 here now, we have the Miami Dolphins, a team obviously that we had to take Micah Parsons earlier on in the draft. Where do you see them going? Do you think they split offense, defense, or do they go defense twice?
I think they're going to actually opt for wide receiver. I think you're going to get Tua some help, and Jalen Waddle is the selection. It's unfortunate that he had his ankle injury. Obviously, that cost him the entire season. I think he very well could have been a top 10 pick if that had not happened. He's an explosive receiver. And honestly, that's what Miami needs, is a little more dynamism to their offense. But getting Jalen Waddle, pairing him with Devontae Parker, I think it's going to be extremely dangerous playing the Miami Dolphins. Just having that Texans pick really helps them, gives them a little bit of flexibility in what they want to do with their pick 17. But I think Waddle would be the selection.
Yeah, you're definitely looking at Waddle as a perfect complement to Devontae Parker in terms of play style. Obviously, brings some speed to that offense. Something that Tua Tagovailoa obviously wants in his offense, and a player he's played with before at Alabama. Something definitely worth monitoring. And at this point of the mock, I just want to remind everyone, if you guys are enjoying our selections or the mock draft in general, just leave a like button. Leave a like. We definitely really enjoy putting out this content for you guys, and we want to make sure you guys are enjoying it as well. And don't forget to leave comments about how you feel about each selection. Going into number 18 now, we have the team, the Baltimore Ravens. A team that has been kind of up and down, honestly, this year. A team that hasn't quite lived up to what their roster says it should be doing. We expect them to be a little bit lower in the draft than 18, if we were being honest. But at this point, where would you have them going?
Yeah, so I think a common problem we see with the Baltimore Ravens is they don't have enough dynamic playmakers on offense. Marquise Brown's not a great fit with Lamar Jackson because he's best suited to, really push the ball down the field, be a deep threat. But I think that you need to get another guy that can be a more of a short to intermediate route runner. I think that selection is Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith's been great with Alabama. Him and Mac Jones have pretty good chemistry. I really like that selection. Getting a guy that you can kind of replace Willie Snead. I think that makes a lot of sense to get a wide receiver for Lamar Jackson. I know a lot of people would suggest don't get a wide receiver for him, but just give him the tools it takes to develop more into a passer. And you can do that by selecting a very, very talented wide receiver.
Yeah, it's all about helping out that MVP type player, the franchise guy. And we see it here with Devonta Smith as back-to-back Alabama receivers go. At 19 now, a team that took a wide receiver last year in Jalen Reagor. Where do you see the Philadelphia Eagles going in this year's draft?
It's very tough because I had mocked a linebacker last mock draft, and I think it actually makes sense for them possibly to go Alex Leatherwood. They gotta beef up the offensive line once again. Obviously, you're not going to have Jason Peters in the long term. I think getting a Leatherwood selection would be really, really beneficial for the Eagles. They do have Dillard, so I'd be kind of interested to see what happens with that if they were to select a tackle. I think one of them very well could kick into guard. I think either one could be interchangeable to kick into guard. Maybe preferably to keep Dillard on the tackle spot, and maybe you can move Leatherwood inside. But I think getting an offensive lineman for the Eagles makes a ton of sense.
Definitely, you're getting some offensive line versatility there. Definitely can help protect the passer quite a bit, whether that be Carson Wentz or Jalen Hurts moving forward. That's yet to be seen. But we see 3 straight Alabama Crimson Tide going. Do we have a 4th here going to the Arizona Cardinals?
We do not, unfortunately. I think we're going to help out Kyler Murray. We're going to actually replace J.R. Sweezy in this. So I think you Cardinal fans should be pretty happy with Wyatt Davis as the selection. He's the guard from Ohio State. I really like Davis in terms of putting him on that offensive line. You gotta upgrade over J.R. Sweezy. And long term, you're getting an offensive lineman that you can keep for 5 years. got to keep protecting Kyler Murray, and obviously he's got some playmakers on that offense, but let's protect him up front.
Yeah, definitely. Kyler's a guy who can, extend the pocket, make plays for himself using his feet, but why not help him out a little bit more up front, give him some more time as a pocket passer, and then let him use his gifts as a runner later on in the play if that is how they go here with Wyatt Davis. Jumping into 21 here, now we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, this pick comes from the Los Angeles Rams in the Jalen Ramsey trade. Last year, they used that selection on Caleb Von Chason right around pick 20. Where do you have them going at 21?
For the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think that corner is definitely a need. DJ Hayden's been out all season, but you have CJ Henderson as your building block at corner one. Trey Herndon's another guy that you can put opposite of him, or Sidney Jones. It kind of depends, but I think you could actually look slot corner here. Shaun Wade will be the selection for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We saw his pick six this past week. Shaun Wade is an exciting young prospect, but I think he's best suited for the slot. Jacksonville really needs to improve in their secondary. I think even in the second round, they could look to take a safety because you need to replace Jared Wilson. I really think that getting a slot corner like Shaun Wade at pick 21 is good value. You got to make that selection if you're the Jaguars.
Yeah, definitely looking at the Jaguars. You're looking at a longer term rebuild here. Obviously, grabbing Wade to put next to Henderson could be a really good 1-2 combo, taking away the slot and an outside receiver moving forward. And obviously, we had them take Justin Fields here at pick 2. So I think the Jaguars at this point would be considered big winners if the board falls to them like this. At 22 here now, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, a team that came off a narrow defeat last night to the Kansas City Chiefs, end up splitting the season series between those two teams, and a team that's been pretty surprising to a lot of folks around the league. I don't think everyone expected them to be a near playoff team or a team that's really, vying for a wild card spot at this point. Where do you see the Raiders going here if they stick at 22?
I think that they could definitely look linebacker at this selection, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a guy that really sticks out for me. He had a phenomenal game against Clemson, like we had previously mentioned in our prior mock. That really stood out to us when we watched the tape. I really like Owusu's game, and I think that really bodes well for the Raiders. You got to get another linebacker, got to get another piece on that defense. I think they could also look defensive tackle because they've been having some issues getting some pressures up the middle. But for this selection, I think getting this linebacker at 22 makes sense for the Raiders. You got to try to improve anywhere you can on defense. Honestly, the offense is fine to me.
Yeah,
I think you have enough playmakers. You took Henry Ruggs last year. Get yourself a linebacker. Keep improving the defense. Maybe in the second round, come around and take that defensive tackle.
Yeah, like you said, Owusu-Koramoah definitely addresses a need for them. Got to bulk up that front seven a little bit more. And like you had mentioned, Henry Ruggs is going to continue to take steps forward as an NFL wide receiver. Quite hasn't lived up to the hype, but he's a big part of their offense, and just stretching out the field opens up the short to intermediate for Darren Waller and some of the other weapons that they have. So I think that the Raiders will definitely be looking defense with their first round selection. Now at 23, we have the Cleveland Browns, a team that has surprised a lot, came off of a nice win against the Philadelphia Eagles as well this week. Where do you see Cleveland going here?
I think for Cleveland, it's about improving that edge position. I think Carlos Basham out of Wake Forest really does that. He's been able to get after the quarterback this year at Wake Forest. He's got 5 sacks in 6 games. I think for Cleveland, you got to get somebody opposite of Myles Garrett. Getting Basham is pretty good value here at 23. I really like the pick for Cleveland.
Yeah, and if you're the Cleveland Browns GM here at 23, are you considering moving Odell Beckham Jr. this offseason? And what do you kind of think his value is?
I absolutely am. It's going to be a little tough with the injury to see kind of the timeline in which you could trade him. It's going to be a really, really tough pathway to do that. It's unfortunate that they weren't able to trade him sooner. They've actually found more success without Odell Beckham Jr. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Browns to trade him. You're not going to get the value back, obviously, that you had traded, but I think it's pretty necessary for the Browns to do so moving forward.
Definitely. And now looking at the Indianapolis Colts here at 24, a team that's got Phillip Rivers for one more year after this, and I believe Jacoby Brissett is expiring this year. Do you see the Indianapolis Colts addressing quarterback or continuing to bulk up the rest of their roster as they're a pretty well-rounded out team at this point?
Yeah, so I think for the Colts, it's a very, very tough decision. Obviously, a lot of the quarterbacks have came off the board already to this point. You're kind of looking at Mac Jones as the one guy that's a possibility. However, I'm going to actually elect to kind of hedge at wide receiver. T.Y. Hilton will be a free agent this offseason. So we will be looking at wide receiver for the Colts, and that's going to be Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. I think he fits really well with Pittman, and Paris Campbell can play the slot. You have Bateman as another outside guy. He's a very, very talented route runner. He's the main reason why that Minnesota offense turns so well. I really like the selection. Getting Bateman, protecting yourself against T.Y. Hilton's free agency. You're going to have to try letting him walk because I think he's already 31 years old. So getting Rashad Bateman at 24, big steal in my opinion. He's a guy that if he had opted out before the season, he very well could have been a top 15 pick.
Yeah, awesome. Walk us through Bateman's kind of drop in value a little bit this year, based on the struggles for for U of M's offense.
Yeah, so the Minnesota Golden Gophers have struggled mightily on offense. I think a lot of that has to do with, worse offensive line play for Tanner Morgan, who, had he opted out before the season, very well could have been end of the first round quarterback. Now he might be looking anywhere from the fourth round to the seventh round. They've just struggled offensively. I think a lot of the defensive coordinators have kind of figured out their RPO styled offense. I think that caused a big, big drop for both of those guys.
Perfect. And jumping into 25 here, now we have the New York Jets on the clock yet again. This pick obviously comes from the Seattle Seahawks and the Jamal Adams trade. You're looking at a team that took Trevor Lawrence at pick 1. Where do you see them going at 25, getting him a weapon, an offensive piece, or addressing a lot of their needs on the defensive side of the football?
I think this is a pick that can go a multitude of ways. I've jumped back and forth from corner to running back to wide out. I'm actually going to have them select Terrace Marshall from LSU. This is a different pick than you're going to see. Terrace Marshall was that third guy, if you remember, from that LSU team national championship. Honestly, he was playing third fiddle, but now being in the number one role, he's had some issues at quarterback because Miles Brennan has been out for the LSU Tigers. But he's a guy that has a knack for the end zone. You pair him with Denzel Mims, and you get Trevor Lawrence some pretty good weapons at that point. Maybe in the second round, you could look at Chuba Hubbard, or if an Etienne falls with that pick, you could have some pretty good playmakers for the New York Jets.
Yeah, definitely. The Jets are going to be a team that's looking to have 3 top 35 picks. More than likely. So obviously, a player like Etienne, if a team doesn't feel like grabbing a running back in the first round, could be a real threat there at the start of day 2. Or like you said, obviously some other needs like edge or cornerback could also be things to watch here at 25 or at like 34, 33, wherever they end up falling there in the second round. Now into 26 here, we have the Tennessee Titans, a team that just keeps winning. Derrick Henry's kind of solidified himself as one of the top 5 running backs in the league. In many people's eyes, he's a really physical downhill runner. Do you see them addressing offensive line further to replace Conklin long term, or do you have them going on the defensive end of the floor of the field for Mike Vrabel's defense?
I have them actually going Jason away. I think that honestly for Mike Vrabel, it's going to be, we're going to beef up that edge position for the Tennessee Titans, Jay for away. But I think that Tennessee definitely needs another edge rusher. You can pair him with Harold Landry. They're going to keep improving that defense. Another way they could look is possibly getting another wide receiver opposite of A.J. Brown. It's hard to tell what they would want to do, but I think knowing Mike Vrabel, I think that they will elect to go with the edge.
Yeah, definitely. Edge is a place of need. Jadeveon Clowney's on an expiring contract, and somewhere that the Titans could definitely be looking to move forward with long term. Now into 27, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that obviously had their whole franchise direction turned around when Tom Brady came to town. They've been very competitive this year. The only team they've really consistently struggled against is the New Orleans Saints. So looking at 27, where do you see the Buccaneers really going? Obviously, the offensive positions are pretty well filled out after they went tackle last year. Are they sticking on the defensive side of the field?
They are. They're going to keep that number one run defense intact, and they're going to select Marvin Wilson. I think for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's about protecting themselves against an Ndamukong Suh leaving, right? They're not going to have a ton of cap. They're not going to be able to afford to keep him around. You got to have the next guy ready to go. You got to keep your run defense stout. And a way by doing that is taking Marvin Wilson from Florida State, a guy that will be able to stop the run. For Tampa, you feel pretty good if he's still here at that spot.
Yeah, definitely. This is something we've mocked in recent mocks as well. Obviously, maintaining a interior presence on the D line is important, and doing it for cheap here with pick 27 is something that the Buccaneers should be pretty happy with doing, grabbing Marvin Wilson. Now into 28, the Buffalo Bills, a team that's been one of the pleasant surprises of the year. Obviously, Josh Allen's really emerged as a quarterback. Really took strides forward again as a passer, both in terms of what he produces on the field, but also just his accuracy and decision making. I think have been pleasant surprises as well this year. Where do you see the Bills going at 28?
Yeah, so for the Buffalo Bills, I see them going with Trey Smith. He's an interior offensive lineman. But I think for them, it's about protecting your quarterback, protecting Josh Allen, helping him out by being able to run the football a little better. But I think Trey Smith would be a good pick here. Just keep improving that offense. Obviously, you saw what happened when they brought in Stephon Diggs. It was just a complete game changer for the offense. They already have a very good defense, but let's keep improving that offensive line for Josh Allen.
Definitely. And now looking into pick 29 here, we have the Green Bay Packers on the clock, a team that obviously is fueled by Aaron Rodgers, and a team that's needed a second wide receiver for quite some time now. Is that where you have them going?
Yeah, once again, I'm going to have Green Bay going wide receiver. Chris Olave from Ohio State. Reason I go with Olave over other receivers, he provides that potential deep threat. We see him at Ohio State. Him and Justin Fields a lot of times hook up on a deep ball. I think Aaron Rodgers could use that same dynamic weapon at pick 29.
Definitely. And now jumping into pick 30 here, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that took Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year at pick 32. As the reigning Super Bowl champions, where do you see them going?
Yeah, I have Joseph Osai, the edge rusher. I think that for Kansas City, you're going to want to keep improving that pass rush, and that way you won't have to pay another one if a contract comes up. But you get those 5 years out of them because edge rushers are hard to come by and they're expensive. So getting a guy you can get a 5th-year option for if you're Kansas City at a position which guys get overpaid, pretty much no matter their skill level. But obviously, it's worth having edge rushers. You have to go get an edge rusher if you're Kansas City.
Yeah, you get the guy opposite of Frank Clark here in this situation. You upgrade over Passignon long term, and you're also putting a guy next to Chris Jones. So you've got one of the best pass rushing fronts in the NFL at this point, and that's obviously something they need to protect their cornerbacks a little bit too, moving forward. Into 31 now, we have the New Orleans Saints, a team that obviously is kind of in an interesting spot here now because they get a little bit of a quarterback tryout here before obviously Taysom Hill this week, perhaps Jameis Winston in some other weeks. That could affect their decision making here going into the offseason, depending on how these guys play. At this point, do you see them addressing quarterback, or do you have them going somewhere else?
I think that they will actually opt to go elsewhere instead of quarterback. I think they're going to see enough from Taysom Hill where they probably like it. A lot of people love Taysom Hill. I think that they might try to develop him into their guy. So I'm actually going to help the rest of that team because they're ready to compete right now. So let's just continue to improve the defense in J.C. Horn. I think getting a guy to replace potentially Janoris Jenkins makes a lot of sense. You put him opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. For New Orleans, just keep improving that defense. You have a lot of offensive weapons right now with Michael Thomas and Kamara. And Adam Troutman's been a nice surprise actually for the New Orleans Saints. You obviously have Jared Cook, but I really like that selection. Getting another corner to pair with Lattimore.
Yeah, cornerback two has been kind of a revolving door there for New Orleans for a couple of years now. We saw Eli Apple fill that for a little bit. Janoris Jenkins, like you mentioned now. So I think Horn definitely fits the bill for what they kind of need to be looking for as a competitive team. And now pick 32, a team that moves to 10-0 on the year with a convincing win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the last pick in the first round. Before we get into it, I want to remind all of our viewers to like and subscribe. We really appreciate your guys' commitment to watching our channel, and we love having you here. Let us know in the comments below how you feel about it. But Austin, walk us through 32 here.
Yeah, so for 32, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to elect to have them go Mac Jones. That's been kind of popular on our mock drafts. Getting the 5th-year option for a guy that'll be sitting behind Ben Roethlisberger. He'll be able to learn from him. I really like Mac Jones, the prospect. So I think in terms of getting that that fifth-year option is so crucial, especially for a team that's got a really good roster that you want to keep, the core of it around. So honestly, you're not going to have to pay, that $30 million or whatever the number is that comes up for Mac Jones, possibly in the future, because I think he will succeed with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, definitely. The Steelers have that infrastructure there. Defensively, they've got a lot of different playmakers and game changers on that side of the football. So they can afford to take a pick that's more long-term answer and let him sit behind Ben Roethlisberger. Obviously, this is something we've seen them do in the second and third round in years past with Dobbs and Mason Rudolph and others. But here now they're getting the first-round guy, a guy that we both feel is a little bit more solidified than those other selections and makes a lot more sense long-term with that fifth-year option. Once again, thank you guys for watching. This has been Utility Sports Monday mock draft for the NFL, and we'll be keeping this coming every Monday. So make sure to be subscribed and hit that bell to keep up with our content.